It'd make a good episode if I crash
Yeah, exactly.
the car, or we get pulled over.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still waiting for like someone to be like a bad guest, where I have to put them in the back of the car. Welcome to Driving Change, where we go for a ride with leading technology executives and dig deep into their beliefs, habits, routines, and influences. Today we take a ride with Paul Johansen, CTO of Edmentum, and discuss a variety of topics from the role of the CTO, product management, hiring great talent, advancement, and work-life balance. Hey, how's it going?
How you doing?
Good to see you. Thanks for taking a ride.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, it's a rainy day. It actually kind of stopped for you.
Yeah, that is kind of nice. I guess it's about time we get some real fall weather here.
So the game plan is we are going to drive to Sparrow Cafe.
Sparrow, okay.
Talk a little bit, and then on the way back we'll talk a little bit more. But
Sounds like
I've been trying to hit all the coffee shops in town, and there's a lot of coffee shops in town.
Yes.
But I've never heard of Sparrow Cafe. I saw some pictures of it. A lot of sparrows paintings on the inside. So
Nice.
we might be up for an experience here. You are currently the Chief Technology Officer over at Edmentum.
That's correct.
For people that don't know what Edmentum is, maybe you can explain a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So Edmentum is an online provider of education software that we sell directly to K through 12 schools. So we produce anything from kind of elementary practice, go home practice your math, kind of putting worksheets online, all the way through high school, doing full courses. So you might take an algebra course, sociology course, any sort of high school course through our product, and you add a lot of kind of analytics and data back end to all that, and then it adds a lot of value in the classroom. So it's a pretty exciting industry to be in. Like it's a good combination of software and content, bringing it together and solving a great problem.
So you're the CTO, and you're leading both app dev and also product management, is that correct?
Yep. So within my team, it's kind of all your traditional IT organizations, so laptop servers, as well as the data center operations, so the data centers that host our products, all the application development pieces, database development, user experience, and then product management, so kind of driving the product strategy as well.
So how do you see the role globally as a CTO? How do you define that?
Yeah, so I think for me, the CTO really has two aspects, right? It's the part that deals with my team and making sure that they understand everything we're trying to do as an organization. So the part I love the most about being part of a software company is essentially, we're the manufacturing arm for the company.
Yep.
And so it's incredibly, as much or certainly, or maybe even more so than in your standard IT organization. It's so critical that my team understands what we're trying to do as an organization, what we're trying to get out to our customers, so that they have the right mindset and the right all the right pieces to be able to build the software the way we need it to build out those features. So that's kind of a key part is ensuring that my organization is prepared with the information that they need, as well as then kind of doing the same thing except more upwards towards my peers in the executive leadership team, the CEO, our board, and investors, ensuring they understand what we're trying to do from a product perspective, what we need to do from a technology perspective, what things are important to do even if they're not related directly to a feature we're going to monetize, but what sort of things do we have to do to invest in the software to make sure that it provides the user experience that we need, the uptime we need, and those kind of things.
The role of the CTO, it's not always common in every organization.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations, large organizations will have CIOs.
Yeah.
CTOs are really common within software product companies.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see CTOs come into play in large organizations as well. And I think that's kind of interesting. Do you think that has to do with the amount of technology changing and ever changing within organizations?
Yeah, I think so, right? I've always kind of viewed the difference between a CTO and a CIO as really, right, when the technology is a key part of the business model that drives the organization forward, that typically is going to be a CTO, right? Somebody that's in charge of that, if it's IP or whatever it is that's built into that technology that drives it forward. And I think, it's so hard these days, I think, to have any sort of product offering. It's getting, more and more so that no matter what you're doing, no matter what business you're in, the technology piece is an integrated role. And so it's not just IT of the past serving up, getting people printers and laptops, right? It's a key part in driving revenue and driving the organization forward as well. And I think that, in my mind, that's what's driving, some of that expansion of the CTO role.
Have you seen the CTO role evolve much?
I think so, in terms of, and I think you're going to see it, the same type of evolution you're going to see in any sort of IT leadership role, right? It's definitely less than, in the past, I think CTOs are more in charge of kind of, taking orders from the business, as you would say, right? And getting, here's what we need to build, and the CTOs would be in charge of kind of that production process. But it's less and less of that, and it's more and more of being integrated into the business.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I even remember like in the 90s, they'd take the CTO and lock him in a room, and he'd be like a mad scientist trying to come up with the new technologies, the new things, but he was not interconnected with everything that was going on. It was more of, maybe a technical co-founder.
I think you'll still have that in some companies today, right? Where that chief technology officer is truly the chief technologist and has, maybe they invented the proprietary technology. So I don't think that doesn't exist today, but I think there's a lot of organizations where it's like Edmentum as well, where there's, it's the executive leader over that technology team.
Product and then development. You see this in a lot of organizations, primarily software organizations, it being split, and there's a real confusion about where the lines are drawn, where do they overlap. Should they flow into the same person? Should they be separate?
Yeah, and there's a million different ways to organize product, right? A lot of times you'll see it paired up with marketing. Sometimes you'll see it as its own separate organization. Like you said, sometimes you see it within technology. And we've went through a number of evolutions of that, even at Edmentum. And it's where each one of those scenarios has its own advantages, and you see its synergies, right? But I think we find that having product and development together, it just eliminates, any sort of contention you would have if those organizations were separate, right? It's like I said, I need to make sure that my whole organization understands what we need to do from a product perspective for our customers. And if the product team is there and part of that organization, it just makes it that much easier to make sure that gets done. And so I think, when we look at, one of the kind of the core tenets that my organization has is focusing on the user. And between that user experience team that I have, as well as the product team, that really helps the organization truly focus on the user, right? You have all the voices of the user right there in the organization, reinforcing that and ensuring from step one of when we start to write stories and epics all the way through the release process. And so I think it makes sure we drive, the best product overall. But the con to it is, and the hard part, and it's there's some great leaders on that team that help do it, is that product also though needs to have an independent voice, right? It can't just be there to serve development, because that's only one of many different areas that product needs to serve, right? We need to make sure we understand the market. We need to make sure we're really the voice of the customer to the whole organization, whether it's the marketing department, whether it's sales, and all of those pieces. So there's a piece that you have to be very focused on ensuring stays independent, so you don't lose what is good, or the good aspects of when that organization is sometimes independent as well. So there, we make a division between, the product managers are there to define what we're building and why we're building it. And the product owners, that are integrated in the development process and part of the Scrum teams, are there to really define how. Right? So it's they're there to write the stories and define how what we need to do actually is going to manifest itself in the product, and that delineation kind of ends up working pretty well. And there's a gray area in it, and it's blurred, but that's essentially
managing the gray areas.
Always, right? I guess that's definitely the theme of everything.
But with everything changing so fast now, business is changing, communication, what your competitors are doing faster or more than you could before. Technology is changing, platforms, methodologies. How do you know you're making the right decisions?
I think the team is able to drive most of that themselves. And so I think, a lot of how you determine that is having a truly enabled team that can help you determine that and help bring the new technologies out. But it's, sometimes you have to, as a CTO, you have to step in and make a decision. So for instance, we have a lot of products that have been acquired over time and are built on different technologies. And we got to the point as we were moving to this integrated strategy that we had to make a decision on the go-forward technology. We had to make a decision when we were going to do that, and we moved all the Microsoft .NET technology. And so that, as a CTO, is a decision that I have to make. And to do that, you have to look at, first and foremost, I think it's all about the people, right? You can talk, there's a lot of things to do with the technology, but if you have the right people, I think, for the most part, you can make any technology work well. And so you have to start by looking at the talent that you have, the talent to ensure that it's there, that supports the culture you want to support, and making sure that whatever choices you make will work well with that talent.
So you're talking about team and people. Talent's hard to find, right?
Especially
on the product side and on the development side.
Indeed. Yes.
So what do you guys do, and what do you do to acquire great people?
I wish I had a great answer for it, right? It's a long process that you had to go through to keep, we have certain standards within our team that we're not willing to compromise on, and I think, all the people within the team do a great job of adhering to those, but it takes us a long time, right? We just won't compromise. So it's really, working through getting the right candidates, trying to get referrals, trying to build a name for your organization as a good place to work, but it takes, it's been taking us, I'd say, anywhere from 6 to 8 months to bring a developer on board in terms of, finding someone, getting offer letters out, and it's just such a competitive market right now that you just, until that person actually steps in the door, right, you're not exactly sure where it's at and how it's going to work. So it's really challenging.
Now you guys had an onshore, offshore.
We did.
And you moved it all onshore, or all internal.
Yep, so about 3 years ago, we were primarily, we did all offshore development with a firm in India. And, as we sat down and said, what could we do to really make the next evolution of the organization to make it that much better? The team basically came up with, one, we said we did Agile, but we didn't really do Agile. It was kind of Agile in the guise of waterfall. And the second was...
You just did waterfall and you called it Agile, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people do that.
yeah, exactly. But the second thing was, if we decide that work, really all the pieces of Agile that are important, like, the collaboration, working together, being in the same office, that we could do it better, right? We truly believe that, and it was, when I was coming up with, the way to essentially talk to the organization about it, or talk to, my peers in the executive team about it, it was really about trying to help everyone understand the difference between labor rate and labor cost. Like, every day when you compare labor rates, of course, an offshore partner is going to look that much better. And the hard part always with software is, how do you make software into a widget where you can put a cost to it, right? So we spent a lot of time, using stories and using historical data to try to make as many assumptions around productivity as we could. And no matter how conservative we ended up being, the benefits from a quality perspective, the benefits from a productivity perspective, by moving that, onshore and in-house, the productivity is, was just multiple times better.
Making it to the role of the CTO, which is kind of a coveted role. A lot of people would love to be in that position. What do you think are some of the things, or maybe a couple of things, that propelled you earlier in your career to kind of make that track towards your current role?
I started out on the software development side. That's where, all of my background is from a technology perspective. And I think, certainly the most, if you want to move into the leadership roles in technology, right? I think one of the big parts is understanding that I had a really great mentor in one of my first jobs who really helped me understand that there's really a science to management as well, right? You can study being a leader, and you can study being a manager just as much as you can study being a great developer, right? And that was my, early in my career, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be, the best developer. I wanted to do, really amazing things from a technology side. And he really helped me understand that there's more to it than just that. I also had aspirations to be a leader, and so to kind of focus on understanding both of those, I think was one of the biggest things.
Is there something that you perceive differently now than you did earlier in your career? A belief that changed?
I think over time it's been the power of the people and the power of the team, right? I think that early in my career I was just, really obsessed with great technology people, right? And I think you see it a lot in traditional IT organizations even today, right? You got a guy who's fantastic at technology, but maybe he's a jerk, or he's hard to work with, or he's toxic to the team. And in the past, right, in my mind, it's like, oh, that guy's amazing from a technology perspective. You put up with that sort of thing, right? And I think today, really my philosophy is the opposite.
With the trends changing in your industry and trying to be on top of the industry, how do you stay on top of that? Like everything that's changing?
Yeah, so from a product standpoint, an industry standpoint, one of the things it's one of my favorite things in the world to do is go out and visit our customers. So I try to do a lot of visits, go out with our services team or our sales team, or even non-customers. We do a lot of market research where we pull together focus groups of teachers, user experience testing of students. So that's, some of the best footage you're ever going to find is like when you've got a first grader telling you what sucks about your software, right? This is a pretty cool thing. So I think, that's the biggest thing in terms of the industry, is just getting out there and seeing how our customers are using it, right? We're in 8,000 school districts. We're, like I said, have millions of users. And so there's a lot of opportunity to get out and see it. And then I think it's surrounding yourself with the type of people that can help, expose you to different ideas and different pieces. And I think, from a technology perspective, that's really the biggest thing, is having a network of people that you can bounce things off of, that you can understand what they're working through and how that relates to what you're doing. There's tons. I think the great thing about being in technology is that, you have tons of opportunities for conferences, going places, doing things that I think, finding those opportunities to learn is there, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got blogs and podcasts and all sorts of different things that you can use to keep track of things. So I think
from productivity, like personal productivity, is there any apps that you like to use, like Evernote or something like that?
I'm a big OneNote fan.
OneNote?
Yeah,
Okay.
I love OneNote. We actually use it within the organization a ton these days, in terms of it's really replaced what SharePoint traditionally has been for us as an organization. So, everybody uses OneNote. It's where we manage our projects. It's how we do our release cadence. And then, the beauty of, I think, it's really interesting, right, with Microsoft and how it's changed with Satya being at the head, is that, I can use that on any device. It works on my iPad, it works on my iPhone, of course it works on my Windows machine, and it just, it seamlessly syncs, and it just, it almost has an Apple feel in terms of how well it works.
So work-life balance. Tell me a little bit about how you manage that, or maybe don't.
Yeah. No, it's, I guess who you talk to, it might be more on the don't, but it's tough, right? And I think it's, trying to have, at least from my perspective, and certainly in the role that I live in, trying to live under the illusion that there is like a strict black and white line of work and life is it's just not realistic, right? So it's all about making choices as to when, things, what's going to take priority and what's going to be the priority at that time. And so there are definitely times where I completely disconnect and focus on my family and do things with my kids, and there's other times where something comes up and it's 9 o'clock at night and I need to hop on a call, and it is what it is. But on the other hand, if it's, next week when it's my 4-year-old's Halloween parade at her school, I'm going to cut out of work and go there as well. So I think it's having that flexibility on both sides.
From an influence standpoint, is there any books that you've gifted maybe to your team or books that really influenced you?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me was a book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Yep.
Where, it's a pretty short, easy to read book. It's kind of written as a business novel. But I think, the simplicity of the concepts in it are really great, right? It's about establishing a team that has trust, and once you build that trust, you can actually have productive conflict on that team. And if the more conflict you can have on the team in terms of, you'll drive to a better solution in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have that trust, you feel open to, questioning other people's ideas or coming up with new things without being criticized.
So I have one last question for you.
All right.
And the question is really for you to ask a question. For other CTOs and tech leaders out there that are watching the show and others that may be on the show in the future, what question would you like to hear them answer?
Yeah, I think, what's most interesting to me, and it may sound a little odd, is what problems are they trying to solve, right?
Yep.
What are the big... I think you can learn so much from, what other problems an organization is seeing, how they're going about solving them, both from, maybe I have the same problem and I'm trying to solve it, you can gain it, or the way they're solving it might be a little bit different that would help you enhance yours, or maybe it's a problem in my organization that I don't even know exists, right?
Okay.
That I need to understand. So to me, it's always, when I end up getting together with peers, it seems like that's where we end up going a lot of time, is talking about
what's their problem and how are they going about solving it.
And then we can start to bounce ideas off it. So I always think that's
a really interesting question.
that it's
like
always
that.
insightful. So
Great. Hey, well, thanks.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.